As the Galactic Empire began to collapse, its battles against the Rebel Alliance that had once been limited to the frontier spread to even the core worlds. In great fleet actions over Kuat, Fondor, Chandrila, Naboo, and countless others, the dwindling might of the Imperial Navy was smashed against the growing power of the New Republic. When a peace was finally signed and the Galactic Civil War turned into a receding memory, a new type of settlement began to appear across the Outer Rim territories. Entire communities formed around the derelict hulks of broken vessels, attracting scavengers, salvage teams, and freelancers. This would be the final legacy of a class of warship that had once been the single most capable design in galactic history, and a symbol of the power of the First Galactic Empire, the Imperial Class Star Destroyer. The Clone Wars were the first major conflict in centuries, and brought to the Galactic Empire hard, actionable data regarding the performance of both its predecessor, the Galactic Republic, and its principal opponent of the era, the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Among the many conclusions drawn from the conflict was the necessity of large capital ships that were equally suited to perform anti-ship warfare, planetary bombardments, and troop landings, all while operating a sizable starfighter complement. This type of ship would become formally identified as Star Destroyers. The Republic Venator class and the Separatist Providence class represented the two best efforts in fulfilling this need, yet by the war's end, both had been rendered largely obsolete. When the Galactic Empire was declared, one of the first major aims of the newly created Imperial Starfleet was to develop a new class of Star Destroyer to supplement and eventually fully replace the fleet of Venators it had inherited from the Republic Navy. An initial effort had already been made during the closing months of the Clone Wars, resulting in the Victory class, a ship roughly equal to the Venator in both size and capability. While promising, as a pre-Imperial design, the Victory class would not be able to effectively carry many of the new starfighters and attack walkers that were being designed for the growing Stormtrooper Corps. The Imperial Class Star Destroyer, or ISD, was the first major post-war design of the Imperial Navy. It was constructed at first by Kuat Drive Yards, a corporation responsible for many of the Republic's most successful fighting machines. Eventually, construction of the warship would be dispersed across many of the Empire's largest shipyards. The Imperial class retained the angular wedge shape and central command tower favored by the former Republic Navy, while incorporating and improving on elements found in the Victory, Venator, and Acclamator classes. At 1,600 meters in length, the Imperial class was nearly 50% larger than the ship it was designed to replace. Its standard armament included 60 XX-9 turbo laser batteries, 60 NK-7 ion cannons, and 10 Phylon 07 tractor beam projectors. Successive production blocks of Imperial-class Star Destroyers would feature slight changes to this armament, including additional quad, triple, or dual turbo lasers and ion cannons. The ship's armament were arranged predominantly along its sides, angled in such a way as to allow ISDs to deliver two independent broadsides or a single frontal salvo. Shielding was provided by two generator domes, located atop the command tower, on either side of the bridge. These were supplemented by a prow-mounted navigational deflector. As required by the ship's immense size, the standard crew loadout for an Imperial-class Star Destroyer was 9,235 officers and 27,850 enlisted personnel. Officers enjoyed more spacious cabins located primarily beneath the command tower, while enlisted personnel quarters were scattered across the breadth of the ship. Because of the tremendous importance the Galactic Empire placed upon its capital ships, Imperial policy dictated that each Imperial Star Destroyer would also carry a delegation from the Imperial Security Bureau. Their primary duty would be to root out any potential sedition or corruption aboard the vessel. Droids assigned to ISDs included MSE-6 repair droids and other administrative, tactical, and custodial assistants. When fully stocked, the ship included enough consumables to keep its personnel replenished for roughly 2 years. In addition to its crew, the class could carry 9,700 stormtroopers, pilots, and the associated auxiliary personnel necessary for a starfighter or ground assault. Both its starfighter and naval infantry complement were concentrated within its large ventral hangar. These consisted of 72 TIE Line starfighters, 8 Lambda-class courier shuttles, 20 AT-AT attack walkers, 30 AT-ST scout walkers, and 15 troop transports. To ensure this massive concentration of military strength could be rapidly redeployed across the galaxy, the Imperial class was powered by a solar ionization reactor, which fed an array of various ion engines, and a Class II hyperdrive. This made the Imperial class one of the fastest ships of its size in the galaxy, yet also the most resource-intensive. The first Imperial Star Destroyers put into service were deployed to the sectors, systems, or worlds that had most fiercely resisted either the Republic during the Clone Wars or the rise of the Galactic Empire. Its immense capabilities meant that even a single ship could enforce stability over an entire planet and bolster the authority of local governments. Various Confederate holdouts, separatist regimes, and rebellious territories were subjugated by Imperial Class Star Destroyers acting as mobile launch bases for planetary assaults. The ships became focused points of Imperial power, and their range and complement brought stability and force projection to even the distant territories of the Outer Rim. Planets and sectors that had remained on the periphery of the Republic's ability to govern were now well within the operational range of the Galactic Empire. As their numbers increased, Imperial Class Star Destroyers became the backbone of the Imperial Navy. Their duties expanded to include the protection of trade routes, deterring aggression from independent governments such as the Hutt cartels, and serving as personal command ships. Various admirals, Grand Moffs, Imperial Security Bureau agents, and other high-ranking Imperial commanders were assigned ISDs and granted independent authority outside of greater naval operations. Roughly 13 years after the introduction of the ISD, production of the class was modified to include various refinements and improvements. These newer ships would be identified as the Imperial II class, and all prior vessels retroactively designated as Imperial I. The most noticeable external difference between the two classes was the replacement of a tractor beam array atop of the bridge with a communications tower. Less discernible changes included improvements to the class's armament and protection, and ability to conduct large-scale landing operations. Many Imperial I-class Star Destroyers would later be modernized and brought up to the Imperial II standard. The effectiveness of the class led to many other successive warships across the Galactic Empire to be directly influenced by the design of the ISD. Some, like the Tector class, were nearly identical, foregoing a ventral hangar and the associated fighter complement. Others, like the Interdictor and the Onager-class Star Destroyers, featured drastically different hull configurations, but secondary systems first utilized on the Imperial class. The introduction of Assertor and Executor-class Star Dreadnoughts ended the reign of the Imperial class as the most powerful modern warship utilized by the Galactic Empire. These so-called Super Star Destroyers replaced the Imperial class as command ships within the largest sector fleets, but their limited numbers meant ISDs still formed the foundation of most formations. The Imperial Class Star Destroyer saw action in nearly every major battle of the Galactic Civil War. Over the course of the conflict, ships of the class were assigned to the most urgent frontline duties, and were involved in the fleet actions over Scarif, Hoth, Endor, and Jakku as part of the wider campaigns across the Mid and Outer Rim. During the earliest years of the war, ISDs enjoyed a place of dominance, with little in the rebel arsenal capable of inflicting even moderate damage upon them. The greatest obstacle to an Imperial Star Destroyer was not any rival class of ship, but instead the vast size of the galaxy. Much of the Imperial Navy had been designed to fight a conflict more reminiscent of the Clone Wars, with static front lines and large enemy formations. These were precisely the types of engagements that the Rebel Alliance would deliberately avoid whenever possible. Star Destroyers were scattered across such a wide theater that individual ships could be targeted and sometimes destroyed by coordinated hit-and-run attacks. Ironically, by the time the intensity of the Galactic Civil War shifted towards the type of warfare they had been built for, Imperial-class Star Destroyers had lost a great deal of their effectiveness. The death of much of the Imperial senior leadership, attacks on key production centers, increasing shortages of critical components, and the declining quality of crews all impacted the ship's overall capability. At the same time, the Rebel Alliance began increasingly utilizing Mon Calamari star cruisers and Starhawk class battleships, which could engage Star Destroyers on nearly equal footing. At its height, the Galactic Empire operated over 25,000 Imperial Class Star Destroyers. By the time of its capitulation to the New Republic, combat operations, mechanical failures, and manpower shortages had reduced the fleet to a mere fraction of that. With the signing of the Galactic Concordance and the end of the war, most captured ISDs were dismantled for scrap by the victorious New Republic. Others, however, survived, seized by piracy groups, criminal organizations, or aspirant Imperial holdouts and warlords. The intense resource demands of operating such vessels, however, meant that few were operated with the same level of efficiency or achieved the same capabilities as they did under the Imperial Navy. It was an effort to keep track of these immense capital ships that ultimately led New Republic intelligence to the First Order. As part of a major clandestine effort to preserve the Galactic Empire, dozens and perhaps even hundreds of Imperial-class Star Destroyers were marked as lost in combat, only to then be secretly transported to hidden anchorages in the unknown regions. For the next 30 years, these ships would provide the foundation for the Starfleet of the First Order. Like the Venator before it, the Imperial class would ultimately be replaced by a larger Resurgent-class Star Destroyer, which incorporated many technical improvements and lessons from the Galactic Civil War into its design. Despite its age, the Imperial class remained a capable vessel when adequately manned and supplied, and it was also used by the First Order as the basis for its Zeiston-class Star Destroyers. With the First Order now too in ruins, the era in which the Imperial-class Star Destroyers inspired fear or courage across the galaxy has come to an end. In its own unique way, it is something of a tragedy that so formidable a ship should have been used in so terrible a cause, destined to be picked apart in nameless deserts and forgotten jungles.
In Arsenal, the Templin Institute investigates the weapons, vehicles, and other constructs from across alternate worlds. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to join the Templin Institute, consider pledging to our Patreon page. Along with increased security access, you'll be able to vote in polls to determine future topics, get custom wallpaper every week, and receive some other exclusive rewards.